Hello and welcome back to the Future of Figure Skating. My name's Anna Keller and my guest today is Jimmy Morgan. Jimmy is a coach and choreographer and the co-vice president of American Ice Theater. Previously, he competed at the national level in pairs with his partner Alex Shaughnessy. Jimmy is an advocate for LGBTQ+ inclusion in sports, and he champions diversity, curiosity, authenticity, and exploration of new types of movement on the ice. Through both his work on the ice and his social media presence, he encourages people to engage with figure skating and art in general as a way to learn more about yourself and engage with new ideas. Jimmy is also one of my coaches, and I'm so lucky that my skating partner Erica and I get to learn pairs from someone with his approach to the sport. Jimmy and I had a really fun conversation talking about queerness in skating, the growing field of showcase competitions, and philosophical topics like how to judge art, the inherent unfairness of sport, and why skating appeals to the casual viewer. I hope that you enjoy this talk with Jimmy Morgan as much as I did. So, hi, Jimmy. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. I can't believe that it's taken this long because I've been wanting to have you as a guest for a while, but excited to make it work now.
I know, it's crazy. Thanks for having me. It's so cool. I mean, I'm honestly a huge fan of the podcast. And listening to past episodes has been so fun just to like hear all the ideas that's formulating. So it's super cool.
That's great. So I was thinking about, your journey since you were a competitive skater to the many different cool things that you do now. And just wanted to start with let's sort of ground ourselves in what was your experience like first as a competitive skater?
I mean, I started skating as like a antithesis to hockey. Hockey was way too rough for me, and so stopped skating for a while. But my friend was going to learn to skate classes, and she was like, "Hey, let's go together. I'm having so much fun." And that first class, like, instantly fell in love. And so as like one of the rare boys in figure skating, I felt like there was a lot of attention on me, and as like a Capricorn people pleaser, I'm always like, "Ooh, I'd like attention! I'm so excited!" And yeah, I kind of got scooped up as a single skater and competed ever since. I like to say that I was probably one of the worst competitors like ever, at least in singles times, because I literally would fall on every jump. I would get into my head. I would craft all these situations, worst case scenarios. And so I like to look back on my competitive days as a like, he was really trying. You know what I mean? And then moved into pair skating and really found my niche there. I think being on the ice with somebody else was a really cool experience to be able to bounce ideas off of and relate to each other on the ice instead of feeling like we have to be the audiences or the judges everything. So great experience competing pair skating. Really loved that.
That's great. And so you got up through, senior U.S. nationals kind of competition. When did you know that it was like time for you to be done with that part of your skating? And like, what was it like for you trying to like say goodbye to that part of your skating career and figure out what came next?
It was hard. It wasn't so. I look back on it now, being like, yeah, that was a very defining moment, but it wasn't necessarily. I think it was more of a process, to be honest. I had been considering, I graduated college and I was considering where I wanted to go in the world. And I think at that point, I saw myself as not competing forever, knowing that I like a lot of other aspects of the sport. And it seemed like a change needed to happen for me personally, which was really hard because you're in a partnership. So telling my partner that and saying, I don't know what I want to do next. It might look like competing with another person. It might look like trying a different role in figure skating, or it really was I'm gonna go on a journey by myself now,
Mm,
which was hard. It was really hard to navigate that with somebody else, especially so young.
yeah. So I think that you're one of the kind of unusual skaters, maybe at the time, that came out while you were still competing. And I wanted to know a little bit about what that was like for you and why you decided to do that and became an ambassador, I think, with Athlete Ally as well.
Yeah, it was really cool. I timeline wise, the Athlete Ally ambassadorship started after I started coaching.
Hmm.
And so I had already been out for
Yeah.
a lot of years. Um, but when I started coaching, I was also involved with Theater on Ice and skating on that team. And so the competitive realm, I was still kind of connected to.
Yeah.
So the process of coming out was interesting. I I always I feel very lucky at having a very stark difference between my skating life and my personal life.
Mm.
And I feel very lucky to have that connection. And so I ended up coming out in my personal life to my
Hmm.
friends and my parents because I started dating my partner, and we're still together now, which is crazy. 13 years, which is like I feel like 37 in gay years sometimes. So yeah, and so we started dating, and he was going to be around. Like he was going to be around, and love him so much. So we um, just kind of shared that journey,
Hmm.
and sort of that whole process of identifying myself as being out and queer was also a defining moment in skating. So there's this really cool connection between who I was as a person then and then also how it affected my skating because I really felt like I stepped into myself and gained a lot of confidence, and arguably I would consider myself a good competitor at that point. So there was this really cool,
Mm.
like, it seems so stark now that I look back, but seeing the process was really cool to experience.
Yeah, that's really great. Did you feel like you had to change anything, in order to be able to be, out in your skating life?
Yeah, I think pre-out, there was such, pre being out, there was such an emphasis on masculinity.
Mm.
I was a pair skater. Growing up, I mean, you have another person over your head. And so you kind of get this discussion about responsibility and safety.
Hmm.
And a lot of the responsibility, and understandably so, was on me as the male skater, being like, you are responsible for this person who's over your head. Take care of her. And coming back to this like Capricorn people pleasing tendency that I had, I was like, okay, now this is my whole religion. I am here to support the health and safety of this other person.
Hmm.
And so I kind of lost track with who I was as a person. How do I uniquely contribute to this partnership? How do I have a voice? And uh, to no fault of other people, it's just sort of the experience that I went through as an individual. And so I felt like coming out was that first step in finding who I was as a person outside of skating. And then it started to breathe life into my own skating.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I think with the sort of dynamics that we like hear about with pairs partnerships, that there's such a Yeah, I mean, I think understandably there's an emphasis on the this like the stem and flower that the man is supporting the woman who's the
The
who's the
frame in the
star of
picture.
it, like yeah, the frame in the picture, like all of that stuff, and also that sometimes people point to pair skating as like, oh, well, this is the, the part of the sport that is, maybe this will appeal to straight people because it's the like, it's big tricks and like, a strong man lifting a small woman. Like it's funny how that dynamic is still creeps into how people talk about the sport and about pairs in particular.
No, truly. And that messaging made its way to us as competitors. I remember multiple conversations with judges where they would say, you two look like you have a really strong relationship. Like, are you dating? And she and I, this was maybe even before I was out, never saw that as an option. We were just really good friends and almost sibling like in that way. And so it was jarring getting that question because we were thinking, is that the message we're putting out? Like
Yeah.
I, and not really having control or an understanding of the messaging that we were putting out because we were focused on point getting. And we want, oh, sorry. Okay. Uh, we wanted to get like the most points. And so we were doing whatever movement or music was given to us because we were like, we want points. And so to hear that from a judge being like, are you two dating? Like, what's the story here? Um, and then us saying no, and they're like, well, maybe actually in the performance you can play into that a little bit. And I was kind of like, oh, I don't know how. I was like, I don't even know who or what I like. I'm 16, like, so yeah, it was very interesting having that messaging received as a competitor.
Yeah, yeah. I've talked to a lot of female power skaters on the podcast, and one of the things that's come up for a few people is this idea that because there are so many more women in the sport than there are men, that there's this, like, even without it being explicit necessarily, this idea that the men are maybe more valuable than the women, and that that can trickle into how dynamics in partnerships or how coaches treat you. And I'm just curious, from your side of that situation, if that's something that you ever felt like those were messages that you were getting, or that you felt that there was that kind of privilege, or did it not feel that way for you?
Yeah, I definitely experienced privilege as a male skater. In my skating partnership, however, I throughout my life, I've always found myself connected to and or partnering with very strong women. And
Mm-hmm.
like I honestly found I am so lucky for that fact. And my pair partner Alex was no different.
Mm-hmm.
She was outspoken, she was confident, still is, and a performer.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt as though I was very lucky to be paired with somebody who was so strong in their convictions because I was still figuring my life out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say, and we were partners forever, 10 years. I trained with maybe one other person as I was learning,
Mm-hmm.
and she did as well, but basically we never skated pairs with anybody
Mm-hmm.
else. And so hadn't neither of us had really gone through that process
Mm-hmm.
of finding a new partner, but being on the outskirts of it and seeing the process, I formulated a lot of opinions over the years. And they're not the most they're I, it's not the best system. It is very broken. And because of this supply and demand of male figure skaters versus female skaters, you get a lot of instances where there is an imbalance of power between the male partner and a female partner, the way the system is currently set up. And so, from what I would see on the outside, a lot of the times a male partner would be closer with the coaches.
Mm.
The potential new female partner might be coming into a situation where they may be willing to move. And so now they're like, you essentially have two coaches. You have your
Mm.
coach and then also your partner. And that's not a partnership.
Yeah.
And so I would witness this happen over and over again and just see the awful dynamics that play out because of that, where people may not feel comfortable bringing things up that they feel are an issue to them. And so
Yeah.
while I haven't experienced it myself, I've seen it.
Yeah.
That culture is very pervasive, especially in the partnered sports.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, and so much of that, at least in how I understand it, I think does kind of go back to like the root of the homophobia in the sport that keeps there from being, more men
Mm.
in the sport. It's a funny dynamic how we see how that all, develops.
I was having a conversation with a friend recently, and they had just learned that I was a figure skater, and they were saying, "What was it like as a young boy, or like growing up with the idea of that, like you might be queer in some
Hmm.
way?" And she was like, "Isn't skating like a gay-friendly sport?" And it really made me like sit and think for a second. And I was like, you know what? It's not. It is not a gay friendly sport. And there are very few sports that are in their
Yeah.
current form. So I will give grace to figure skating in that it has room to evolve. But I think that there was this weird like dichotomy of like you're gay, right? And then me being like, no, I don't know. And then, well, you do figure skating, but then in figure skating, there's this pressure to be hyper masculine
Yeah.
so that you can fit in and be not the gay one in figure skating. So out of skating, everybody is making the assumption that you're queer in some way. And then in skating, people are making the assumption that you're wanting to be hyper masculine. So it's like no matter where you are, you can't win.
Yeah.
And you never feel like welcome and safe. And so that has been a recurring formative experience for me and being like, what was that? You were stuck in the middle of this like mess of other people's opinions.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like skating has been fighting the stereotype of being too gay since like at least the 1930s, and had
Yeah.
it never changes, and so it's like, well, maybe you could stop fighting it, but yeah,
Right. Maybe the world is gayer than we think it is. Maybe being gay or too gay isn't a bad thing.
yeah,
And maybe there's all of these ideals that we deem as non-traditional that feel wonky to other people that feel very true and safe to other people. So yeah,
yeah,
I think about that a lot, especially when I'm on the ice, being like, and I hear some of the things that get thrown out. I'm like, where is that coming from? You know?
hmm hmm So I want to talk about some of the work that you're doing now and sort of how you found your way as a coach to sort of the niche or niches that you have now across, the different worlds of contemporary skating and theater on ice and all of the coaching choreography work that you do. So, did you always think that you might want to be a coach or continue in the skating world in this way?
I was so against being a coach when I was in college. And that like blows my mind still because I love it so much now. But I went to school for mass communication and public relations, and I really wanted to work in. Um, I had like high dreams. I wanted to be like overachieving, working in a marketing agency, and that type of vibe. And so I was very lucky to work with the organizing committee for the U.S. Championships and the World Figure Skating Championships in 2016, doing some intern work and then work for digital media for them, which was so cool, so fun. And so I always felt like a disconnect though with that work, where I was like, I feel sort of on the outskirts when I want to be affecting what's going on. And so I ended up doing a learn to skate class in Boston, and I had so much fun. Like seeing kids in front of me, their eyes are just like huge, just like looking at you, being like, this ice is slippery, help, you know? And feeling like the way to help them and guide them towards maybe a love or maybe not. And having that much influence in another person's life felt very exciting for me. And then also sort of inner child healing. Like, I was like, ooh, I know, like, if this kid were me, how would I want to be coached? And having that much like excitement and power over that, I knew I was like, maybe I got to do more of this.
So you're really involved with theater on ice and showcase, and I don't think that I've talked a lot yet on the podcast about those disciplines, and maybe people who just watch singles, pairs, ice dance don't know as much about those. So could you explain a little bit for the viewers what, yeah, really what those disciplines are, and a little bit about how they're judged?
Yeah, absolutely. So theater on ice and showcase are two branches of theatrical skating, and this is separate from traditional artistic figure skating, where the main goal is the artistic performance and not so much the technical ability of the skaters. Although that does play a role, and we can kind of talk about
Yeah.
that a little bit too, of the intersection. But so theater on ice is typically the one that people are more familiar with, and that is only large ensemble skating. So there are teams of 8 to 24, and these skaters compete two programs on the teams. One is called the choreographic exercise, and one is called the free skate. Then the choreographic exercise has three separate axes that you are required to follow. So, for example, there will be the goal of hitting rotational movement, and we're trying to find all different ways that the body can move in a rotation, from joints, from body, from groups of people. And there'll also be things, axes like a choreographic process that could be acceleration. So combining these two things in unique and creative ways in an ensemble um, is the choreographic exercise. And in addition, there is a theme every year. So some themes I can think of in the past have been revolution or nature, things like that. And largely that's about music choice, but I think one of the biggest opportunities is to show what would nature look like in the movement and in the music choice as well. So there's a lot of potential with this ensemble theater on ice. And then sort of the like cousin branch of that is showcase skating, which is another arm of theatrical with more options for the number of skaters that are in on the ice at once. So there are solo categories, there's duet and trio categories, there's mini ensembles, and production ensembles. So within those solo categories, you can choose to compete in different categories that best pertain to your goal. So there are character performances, emotional performances, lyrical pop, which is like your favorite song with
Hmm.
lyrics that you compete to. I call it competitive show programs.
Yeah.
There's comedic, which is really fun. It's the whole essence of the program should be funny in some way. And then lastly, my favorite is choreographic exercise or choreographic artistry, which
Hmm.
is using all of the choreographic tools that you know, working with your choreographer, and finding unique ways to showcase those skills. So, for example, you can have parts that are using contrast in interesting ways. Maybe you're playing with speed and tempo and energy, or maybe you're telling a unique story through your movement, and that is without any lyrics. So this is purely instrumental, and the costuming is really minimal for these categories. And so I talk about this one so much because I really feel like this is the one that has the most emphasis on growing figure skating as a explorative sport. So those are the solo categories. There's also, duets and trios, and then mini ensembles are the ones that are 4 to 7 skaters.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then for the production ensembles, it's 8 to like 30, I think. So it is really cool. It's a great opportunity for clubs and skaters and programs to be working on their theatrical skating both from a solo perspective and from a smaller to larger group perspective, which has a very clear pipeline to show skating.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and it gives some structure and competitive opportunities to the kind of skating that otherwise you might, just be doing in a show or not have as many opportunities to pursue.
Correct. And I also, what's so stark about it is that I'm a huge skating nerd and I love watching skating. And my first showcase nationals that I went to, I had never seen better performers than I did that week.
Mm.
Nothing more than a double Lutz maybe that whole week, but I didn't care.
Hmm.
I would so much rather see that level because now skaters are being judged on the level of commitment that they're giving to their artistry or how effective their skating skills blend with the music. And you spoke about scoring, the most weighted score in Showcase is what's called artistic appeal. And although it is quite subjective,
Yeah.
it is basically the score that says, would the judge want to see that again? Or have they seen something like this before? Or would they, would a talent scout maybe pay for this type of unique performance? And so it kind of gets you thinking as a coach and a choreographer about have are we really being inventive or like have we seen this before or are we being authentic to who I am as a person,
Hmm.
because that's all going to play a role into the scoring, because you can't really fake authenticity.
Yeah, it's so interesting because so I've been having lots of conversations with people who want there to be more artistry in figure skating, and the thing that keeps bumping up against is okay, but how do you judge artistry? And skating is sort of we have this inherent tension that we want the subjectivity is baked into the sport, and also as a sport it needs to be objective, and there's lots of pressure for everything to be objective. And so it's like this tug of war almost between the desire for more creativity and expression and freedom and all of this in the sport. And so I was very interested in, what can we learn from Showcase, both as a discipline in itself and also like what can we learn from how it's judged to potentially bring into these conversations about having an artistic program and a technical program, or bringing more
Mhm.
artistry into competitive figure skating. And so I'm curious, like that's many directions of that conversation, but I'm curious how you see that sort of subjective judging of artistry play out. Does it seem fair? Does it seem like it's producing the kinds of diversity of skating that you'd want to see?
I would say that showcase skating is very much figure skating's like newborn sibling. And that newborn sibling is still very much figuring out how they want to be in the world.
Uh-huh.
And which is why it's so exciting, I will say, because there's a lot of people who are very interested in that same goal of finding how you can effectively judge something that is subjective. And so I would say that there are a lot of improvements still to be made. How can the types of questions that you're asking are exactly the types of questions that the that I am so excited that the judges are asking now. And I think what we're learning is that there's a certain pressure for the want of legitimacy, or this goal of legitimacy, to conform to the systems and structures that are already set in place. And so what I'm finding is that there is a lot of crossover right now between traditional values of skating skills and the way that they present or relate to presentation or the artistry of a program. So the way that I'm maybe could make that a little bit clearer is that speed, for example. People talk about speed as it's a one-for-one comparison to skating skills. And in my experience, and like I'm still discovering new things about skating all the time, there's nothing harder than skating slow. and and we don't do figures anymore, which is classically like almost the slowest type of skating that you can do effectively. And so I'm always very concerned with when I see a performance of a very fast skater who maybe doesn't have the most control, which is the opposite of speed sometimes for me, and as skating skills go. The speed is what's noticed, and it's flashy. Like when you see a fast skater, you're like, whoa, that's impressive. But for example, I like Jason Brown was one of the guest skaters at our club show, and seeing him practice on the ice in person and seeing the speed, I was like, I get it. I was like, I get why people are obsessed because it's so cool. I think what I'm trying to get across is that there are other ways and more diverse ways to show skill than what is currently being rewarded. And I think that has a lot to do with representation and a lot to do with education. And so I guess what I'm saying is that I kind of lost where I was a little bit. But bringing away, like finding a way to bring that into traditional skating, or what can we learn from Showcase, is I think Showcase is taking a look at these things and being like, okay, how do we judge this? And how do we reward authenticity and uniqueness while also having very specific things we're looking for? You can't. And so you kind of have to pick. And so my thing that I always love to talk to my students about is effectiveness. So let's decide, and this is something that I learned through American Ice Theater and contemporary skating, is a real appreciation for art and movement from the perspective of the artist or the mover, not from the perspective of the audience member or the person seeing the art. And so I really want my students to ask the question, what are they going for? Am I going for a traditional toe point, elegant, smooth skating program? That's valid. Like, I mean, we see how effective that is in traditional skating. They're beautiful. There's a reason that they're popular and traditional. Um, However, I do think there's a conversation to be had about people, not just skaters, going for other pieces of art that feel more authentic and exciting to them as a person. And having the judges have that education of saying, you know what, I would not choose this music for my own skating, or I would not do a body roll to the left. I would much prefer to the right. I would not do footwork sequence totally in like a neutral spine. However, I can see that they chose that very deliberately and they executed it in a very effective way. And I think that's what should be noticed and rewarded instead of the ideal.
Yeah, how close are they to the doing the, the closest they could be to what they're trying to communicate, as much as like the closest to some ideal. But then that goes back to the education of the judges as well. Are the judges in Showcase mostly people who are coming out of being figure, they figure skating judges and they're also judging Showcase?
Correct. So showcase and so like as the younger sibling, we are using the resources that figure skating currently has, which are traditional judges. So what we're seeing in showcase skating a lot of the times is the emotional programs are sad and longing and slow, and the character programs are a little bit like boop 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 boop, and and I'm not saying that that's bad. Like I love those programs. They're so entertaining and so moving. But I think that's because skaters are trying to be an ideal character or an ideal emotional. And a lot of the times it's because when they try and take a risk, maybe at a smaller competition or something like that, they're not rewarded for it. And I do think there is a conversation to be had about the execution of the skater as well. So they have a responsibility, like if they are going to take a risk, then step into that and be proud of it, regardless of the outcome. That's a lot easier said than done, even from personal experience. But there's a shared responsibility in creating this type of community between skaters and coaches and judges, where I think if we all take the step together, it could be a huge opportunity instead of just relying on the skaters as that's their responsibility. There's more of a responsibility between coaches to celebrate that and encourage that uniqueness and authenticity, as well as judges to be educated on the possibilities and then be able to judge based on the effectiveness of what the skater was going for.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I like the idea, and that the judges have, a certain responsibility to be widely educated, and that we draw judges from diverse backgrounds, and all of those pieces to it, and then put some trust in the hands of the judges to allow them to have different opinions. And we talk about like in a major, at the World Championships, you have a panel of 9 judges, and in my ideal world, those 9 judges might, have some pretty different opinions about some parts of skating, and that would be okay. And then I bump up against what I often see, which is, well, that's not how the judges are trained. They're all kind of trained to a very specific standard, and sometimes punished if they go away from it. but also just that, many of them don't necessarily have their own, wide art, background in different kinds of artistry either. And so it gets me thinking about where those judges are drawn from, and can we bring people in who, as part of a panel, maybe who maybe don't know as much about the figure skating side of things, but have a, really huge background in dance or theater or music, and they might, enrich our understanding of those elements of artistry. I don't know practically, how you would do that, but it does seem like diversifying that pool of people is, has to be part of how you welcome a more diverse pool of skaters.
Yeah, I think there's two ways to look at it in diversifying is through representation, like we're suggesting, right? There's that idea that if you have different people with different backgrounds and thoughts and feelings, then we will have more data to show what is the collective's idea of figure skating and where it should go. And then you can sort of help in that regard through education and being maybe you don't have the specific experience, but you're open to the idea that you don't know. And that's okay. And maybe you learned something through this performance that you didn't know of the possibilities. And so now a judge is asking the question, I saw this skater like skate on their toe picks for like 45 seconds. It was so impressive. I thought it was amazing and very effective artistically, but I have to dock them points. And have the judges ask these questions, being like, I can't effectively judge with an open mind. And so, yeah, education and representation, I think, can both work together to create this place of um, curiosity. Like,
Yeah.
what's the type of skating that can contribute to the already existing ideal traditional skater in ways to make it more diverse and exciting and open up the realm of possibility for skaters and audiences to experience. And then I'm also kind of curious about, you had asked the question where we pull the people from.
Yeah.
And currently it's volunteers. And so there's the inherent sort of socioeconomic bias there because in a volunteer situation, presumably you have free time. And the way we see the world and the way the world right now works is that is very heavily geared towards one type of person that doesn't necessarily need to spend as much time working. Maybe somebody who's white or who's a little bit older and who's maybe retired or something, and who has generational wealth, so they don't necessarily have to work so much. And that's a great thing because we have volunteers. Like, how amazing is that? However, I do think that there is another opportunity to widen the search and make it more possible for different types of people to feel open and encouraged and excited about spending time judging skating because it is, I mean, time is money.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a real question about, professionalism and like what that means. And you can love something and still need to be paid to be able to be a part of it.
Hmm.
But, we've seen that in some sports where they moved from having volunteer to paid pool of referees, for example, in some sports. And like that, there are places where they've made that change. And it's like, it's hard to get from where we are to being, to having the resources to do that, wouldn't happen all in one go, but it is,
Hmm.
I think, a really important question to bring up about who's able to participate. And then, if you are, in that system as a volunteer, what power dynamics that creates among judges, which is a whole other thing. But, I sometimes think about, there's a reason that judges themselves don't necessarily want to rock the boat if they want assignments, if they want to sort of rise in the ranks of judging. And so it's like, they may not get to be as opinionated as they might want to be under the current system either.
100%. And if we think about the culture of figure skating and the way that it's set up right now, even if you look at I'm sorry, a score sheet, there's a hierarchy.
Yeah.
There's a clear number one and a clear number 47 as there is Showcase Nationals. There's so many entries this year. It's actually great and
Yeah.
awesome, getting very popular. But that hierarchy is built into the system.
Hmm.
And so you kind of learn as a skater, like, I am worth 5 out of 15. And there's no, like, if you're not currently working through some of those thoughts and feelings, either with somebody who's professional or not,
Hmm.
you're going to take that with you. And a lot of judges are also former skaters, former coaches. We've all grown up in this system. And there, unless you're aware of it, there's no way that that's not going to affect the way that you work.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so maybe there are some subconscious aspects to this that can be begun to, I don't know, that can be sort of we can start that conversation
Yeah.
of being like, how am I maybe affected by my upbringing in this sport in ways that is affecting the way that I act in this sport?
Yeah.
And this is one of my soapboxes, so I'm sorry for unlocking it, but
No, please.
that's why I'm so passionate about teaching art to kids,
Hmm.
because art is the avenue that you learn to express your thoughts and feelings in a way that you might not understand yet. And it's a way to look at others in a way that's open minded and accepting. And so, when you experience seeing somebody's art and you say that's gross or ugly or annoying, that I want skaters to realize is not a reflection on the other person. It is actually a reflection on yourself, and are ways that you can use to ask yourself these questions about, why do I get that reaction? And I also want judges to have that experience as well. Why am I getting this reaction when I hear topic noises? Is that because it's inherently a bad sound? Or is it because I've gone through 20 plus years of people telling me that that's a bad sound and then associating that with a bad sound? And so all of these questions, that it just, these questions pose more questions, which I think frustrates a lot of people, especially when you're trying to create policy.
Yeah.
And so I empathize with that. And I do feel for people who are like, we need to make a decision. But I think these questions are necessary because it gives a window into maybe the future of what people might be able to think about skating and how they can use it in their life.
Yeah, I mean that's when you think about like, okay, what is the broader, value of participating, of watching it and everything, like engaging with, it's a way for people to engage with art, in the way that it can be embodied or emotional or any of those things. And so, yeah, I think in some ways I wish we could get to a place where we say, yes, there is an inherently subjective part of skating. We're not going to try to get rid of it. So let's talk about what it is and how we want to
Yeah,
work with it, because I think we're not having as many nuanced conversations as we could be, about all of it, because there's a big pressure to some kind of to deny that part of that even exists.
100%. And that kind of leads into this other idea, and kind of going back to the beginning of when you were talking about the me coming out,
Yeah.
and it that experience of coming out and experiencing, saying, oh, this is kind of like me opening up the possibility of so many things that I didn't first think was possible, or maybe it was scary. And having these conversations are windows into a larger conversation about maybe the world isn't so black and white. Maybe it's not artistry or technique. Maybe it's actually both. And there's a certain art to the technique in the way that we teach it or perform it. And there's a certain technique to the art in a way that makes it more accessible for people to grasp. And so I am very passionate about the way that like queer theory can connect into like movement or art in that way, in an appreciation in it's not good or bad, it just is. And we just can let it be that instead of trying to put it into a more specific box so that I understand it better.
Yeah, and that being okay with things that are ambiguous or that are ambiguous to you, that's a there's some discomfort in that, I think, for probably and to some degree for everyone, and for some people a lot of discomfort. And I think it's one of the things that always certainly attracts me to figure skating is that it can't be, resolved down to being just one thing or another. I talk to a lot of people who are in sort of the contemporary skating world, or who have kind of moved away from the traditional box of competitive figure skating, who have tried to leave the competitive aspect of it, behind entirely. I had a conversation with Deneen Richburg, who was telling me, like, I don't think that really there should be, competition and
Mm-hmm.
art. I don't think really go together. I think we should, in fact, be kind of trying to separate these things more and have
Hmm.
just, the artistic side of skating without competition. And so I guess, this is sort of the mirror image of the question of like,
Hmm.
why put competition in art then? And why, continue to, to show things in that way?
Yeah. And what an exciting, fascinating conversation that I definitely don't have the answer to. And I don't necessarily think it's possible because people are different.
Yeah.
And I've spoken to so many skaters where they're like, no, I want help with my artistry to score more points because I am competitive.
Hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, go for it, you know? Like, but then there's also skaters who are like, I just want a place to express movement. And I like, I don't even care if I have the required elements in my program. And
Hmm.
I'm like, yeah, let's go. That's awesome. And so I think that the real power is not within the organizations to get everything right. I think when there's politics involved, there will be an amalgamation of ideas
Hmm.
always. But I think the real power could actually come from giving this empowerment to the skaters to decide their own goals and their own way of tracking success and results that's not necessarily tied to a organization or a medal or a score count. And I think that's something that is always spoken about in a yeah, yeah, yeah way, which is like, yeah, of course, like we care about them as humans, but we're gonna score them high. You know, we want them to score high first. And so I think one of the biggest opportunities that figure skating has, and something that I'm sort of like basing my own coaching philosophy around, is let's not reduce the priority of skating skills and learning about skating in a technical way or even an artistic way, but let's up the priority of mental awareness and physical awareness that gives us more avenues to track success than just a medal. So, for example, skaters could use figure skating as a way to learn more about their body and the way that it works under pressure, or maybe unique ways that you can deal with injury prevention or core activation and breath.
Hmm.
And they could even use it as a way to work through feelings of anxiety or confidence in a way that Maybe you never learn a new skill. Maybe for months we are working on a forward crossover. And that can be very scary because you're like, I'm not improving. But it only feels like you're not improving because you're not aware of the physical benefits that you're getting. Like, I am so much stronger in my core now. I'm so much more aware of where my feet are underneath my hips. And then, not even to mention the mental aspect of being, oh, I am so much more confident skating in the middle of the ice. Or I'm confident knowing that I just failed that attempt, knowing that I can attempt a new one. And tracking all of that in addition to the skills that you're learning can be super empowering, almost making skating not necessarily everything, but it's almost just like a tool that like you can learn about yourself and the world around you.
I love that it's a more integrated approach, both skating into life and life into skating, and that kind of awareness. I think we often talk about only in the context of like, oh, you are learning these like mental skills in order to be able to not be nervous at competition, so you'll do well, and only secondarily are you thinking, well, actually learning those skills means that you have them for every part of your life, not just for,
Yeah,
maybe pre-competition.
exactly. And making skaters aware while they're learning that.
Hmm.
Because at least in my experience, I had to kind of go back in my skating journey and think and really reflect on it. Not saying that people won't do that at the end of their career. Of course, that's going to happen. But having more of an awareness of these life lessons that I was learning in the moment and not having them as a afterthought, having them as equally, if not more exciting and valuable than the skills that I was learning as a skater.
Hmm.
Because at the end of the day, not everybody's going to go to the Olympics. Not everybody's going to make Team USA. Not everybody has the resources to do that.
Hmm.
But there are a lot of opportunities to go to an ice rink and get some rental skates and talk to a coach and say, I just want to challenge myself. And that's going to take you having an awareness of that challenge and the way that you are improving as a human is going to take you so much further than going around to local news stations being like, this is my Olympic medal. And there's that, and that seems a little shady, and it's not trying to be shady at all, like, because that's such a proud moment because you worked your entire life for something. But how do we acknowledge the skaters that won't get there
Yeah.
and make it seem like it's a worthwhile venture? Because sometimes I'm talking to skaters and they're like, I'm 18, I can't pass my novice moves, I'm done. Or my friend landed an axle 5 years ago, I'm done.
Yeah.
And finding ways to talk to those skaters about giving them a reason, if they choose, to continue.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, progress is not on this like linear one-dimensional pathway. I often think about how that just means that we like by doing that you're intentionally whittling down the number of people who can be involved and get and appreciate the sport, and like why would you want to do that? Why would you be setting up this system that the whole goal is to like cull the number of people who are in it? And that, yet that's
Right.
what we have.
Truly, that is what we have. A system that weeds people out. Only the strongest make it through. And that's not sustainable. That's a system that is like a funnel. Like um, it's just kind of the way it is. And so I think it is scary though. We see this all the time in like the larger picture of the world when more people are empowered, the people who experience the most power are destabilized. And so, not to get too political, but I think there is an inherent connection there between politics and the way that we see success in skating because
Yeah.
the more exclusive it is, the better it feels when you get there.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
definitely yeah, I can see that, and yeah, the way when it's set up to be you know all about that Olympic gold medal. It is, about being the best of the best, and you have to set up a certain system in order to create that title for people. So I want to ask you about your work on social media and some of the sort of broader ways that you've been finding to have a voice and have some impact. I think a lot of people know you from your accounts and the hashtag Jimmy and everything. And so was that a way for you to sort of bring your communications background also into your career? What made you decide that you wanted to have that kind of a platform also?
I've sort of always been like a communications nerd. I remember when like every social media was like introduced, I was obsessed by the like idea and um, just the coolness that you can reach so many people, um, and obviously the complications that come with it. And I had always been posting, and I remember a very specific time when I started doing choreography work, and I needed a reason to like do movement and create movement. And so I decided that it was going to be a movement journal, essentially, of me like creating uh, pieces to music or like just
Mhm.
whatever. And I started doing that, and then one of the first videos that I was like, oh, people are like liking this was like skating to songs I always wanted to as a little gay boy. And it was so cool. I think it was like the Pussycat Dolls or something. And I just remember so many people like connecting with it and me feeling so happy and like seen. And it just really got me thinking about like the ways that I had experienced skating and how it maybe could be different. And it's evolved since then. Like I went through periods of time where I really was like chasing algorithm numbers and wasn't posting choreography at all and doing these like short just like whatever videos and
Mhm.
hated that experience. But recently I have felt a lot more a lot more of a connection to the practice of making these videos because it really makes me think about the way that I understand skating and the way that I might want to see it in the future. And having the not responsibility, the practice of making it into a condensed idea
Mhm.
is a very validating or a very helpful practice for myself because it forces me to kind of think about it and like what do I actually think about this, because people are going to be watching, so I'm like, oh, I want to make sure what I say is what I mean, and I'm not always going to get it right, and I don't have that expectation, but um, it's helped me become, I think, a better communicator or a better coach because I have this like practice that I'm consistently talking to people.
Mhm.
So if I can say it's a little selfish, it's a great practice for me. It's almost a like little public journal in a
Mhm.
way where there's more maybe pressure to create the thought that I actually believe.
Yeah. You had a really interesting video recently where you were talking about the inclusion of trans athletes. And I thought your perspective was so interesting because you were talking about how sports are inherently unfair. And so I would
Mm.
love for if you don't mind sort of repeating a little bit of what you were thinking there. I feel like that was a really interesting thing that I would love for people to hear a bit.
Yeah, I again, it's this selfish nature of just being so annoyed by the idea that people are excluding a certain type of person from participating in sports under the guise of it being unfair.
Hmm.
Because when you really look at sports as and you really think about it from an equity perspective, especially in skating. Skating is a great example because it's so expensive and there's so many niche specialists out there that maybe you're a little closer to, or maybe there's so many factors that go into the success of a person beyond their commitment or their sacrifice. And so it's really a symptom of a larger issue of the way that we see sports as this like grand validation of us as a better human. Because at the end of the day, if you really think of sports, it's just like who had better access to training or who was created in a way that they are already better at it somehow and they get to show it off. So there's, those nature versus nurture situations where like you're like, am I inherently better at this, or was I born under the circumstances where I would be better than this? And so to hyper focus on trans people as a example of unfairness without acknowledging everything else that goes into the fairness of sports, then I have a real problem with that just because it's focusing on trans people as the reason for unfairness when it has never been fair. And so really it just is people thinking in a transphobic way because they're afraid of the inclusion of these people and what it might mean for them as an athlete or somebody who participates in the sport.
Yeah, and it's something that, I've been thinking a lot about from the perspective of having open gender pairs and dance and pairs in particular, is that the two things that I come up against are that, they're kind of this bioessentialist ideas in the same kind of way where it's like, well, men will be inherently better at it, so two men will be too good and two women will be bad. And it's like they won't be able to do it, it won't be safe. And there's so many things that are wrong with that, but but it's gotten me to think about the idea of like, well, we don't know what is possible until people have access to the opportunity to do it and are supported and encouraged to try something. So like this idea of like, okay, well, could two women do an overhead lift? Well, yes, but also the reason you're not seeing that is because there are so few opportunities for people to learn, and tall women get pushed out of the sport way before they would ever even think about, so like you go back and you go back and it's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
we simply don't know what's possible because of all of those opportunity factors that you're getting at. And so, first part of what was resonating with me about that was thinking about the ways that we simplify looking often at like one physical attribute, like the idea that like testosterone levels are going to be responsible for everything in
Mm-hmm.
sport and ignoring the rest of all of that. So anyway, thank you. It resonated a lot with me. I know you got some hate on the internet for posting about it, but I really appreciated it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I will say I knew, like I was ready. I was, because I posted a disclaimer, like I was like, if you're gonna share misinformation or transphobia, I will be deleting it. Like it's just not a space that I want that type of information to live. But so I was ready for it. But there also is this like very like what a patriarchal way to look at it. Like testosterone is the only thing that matters. And if you think about partnerships, also, for example, we think about partnerships and what makes a partnership work. And it's not like any, if you are assigned female at birth and you are looking for a partner, you're not just going to take any guy.
Yeah.
Like, there are other aspects to what makes that person good at what they do. And also vice versa in a opposite gender situation. So why not also highlight those as potential markers of a good partner? Because to be honest, scientifically, when you're assigned male at birth, there's a larger spectrum between the the biology of those people than there is between when you're assigned female at birth. So like there's a larger discussion there that we are totally ignoring. And that's sort of why I get so passionate about it. Of course, because like to protect my trans friends and family, but also because we're looking at this in such a non-open way that's also going to affect artistry, and it's
Yeah.
also going to affect the possibilities of figure skating in such a profound way that yeah, we will stand no chance if we're getting stuck on this.
I want to come back to one other sort of, opportunity for a soapbox moment, or, getting your thoughts on what can we do to help make figure skating appeal to general audiences? I was going to say again, but I think there's probably too much focus on trying to like recapture what skating was in the 90s in North America. But we are heading, into an Olympic year, and there's this sense of like, okay, we're going to get more attention from the general public. How do we as this sport grow that and appeal to people who are not typically watching skating?
Well, number one, I think we have like we're doing now, we have to ask questions. We have to I think we have to talk to people who don't know figure skating. And we have to, because everyone I not don't know figure skating. They're not involved with it regularly. We have to talk to the people who are like, oh yeah, I watch it every 4 years. Because that's almost everyone. Like
Yeah.
it's not a lack of interest. The interest in the sport is there. But so there's something missing between that Olympic hype and the integration of that interest throughout the year. And so number one, talking to people and sort of saying like, why, like, would you watch like would you watch a competition, or and where would you watch it, and
Mhm.
how would you watch it? Would you watch one performance, or would you watch an entire competition? And just getting, I think, actual people's opinions and data on that. I don't actually don't even know if that exists. So um
Yeah. It's a question that I have asked many people, including people within the ISU and federations, and have never
mm,
gotten a satisfactory answer to of like what kind of market research has been done and how to actually to understand, because there's a lot of assumptions that we
yeah,
talk about what appeals to the general public, and also the general public is more than one, block of people.
right.
But I do wonder what kind of research is actually being done. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, and in that way, like we're always so concerned about objectivity in skating. And so let's take that energy and bring it into how we understand the sport as a whole, from maybe skaters and non-skaters. What are the percentage of skaters who feel as though they have a space in skating? Like, what's that number? Or what are the percentage of people who don't watch skating? Would they watch one performance versus a competition of eight? So I guess a survey is the short answer, which is so annoying as an answer. But I think another one is accessibility in a way that and representation, kind of similar themes to what we've talked
Mhm.
about already, is that like if you're not invested, you're not going to spend money on the apps that figure skating might be on, or you're not going to watch an entire 4 hour event. So I think finding ways to meet people where they are, there's going to be probably an initial dip or an investment in money made. And I think that's a big block in making these steps, because there's going to be a monetary investment in bringing this to people who don't see it already. And we may not see that return until 5 or 10 years down the line. And so I think that might be a potential block, because we have that partnership with the organizations that skating works with already. And they are responsible for sharing it. And so I'm not saying stop those contracts, but what I'm saying is I think there may be ways that we can invest in bringing it to other people
Yeah.
where they already are. Things like, social media is such a buzzword, but like, let's put entire performances on YouTube, and let's pay for the rights so that they're not blocked, so
Mm-hmm.
that people can experience it and see like, whoa, like that was really impressive. I think another aspect of this too is bringing people into the world that's accessible. So the scoring system is not that way. There's no way somebody can look at the scoring system and be like, oh, like now I understand why Yuna Kim didn't win the Olympics that one year. And so it's like, how can we maybe not necessarily change everything about the scoring system, but find ways to have a public version of that score where they're like, oh, like that jump got this amount of points. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
why, but like that's cool. Or like here's the base value and here's what it got. And so I know those types of tools exist, but I think refining those tools and meeting people where they are, at least technical,
Mm-hmm.
and then having experts like educated dance professionals or people who are used to talking about artistry in a way that can help others understand it and bring them into the space
Mm-hmm.
is also a great investment. So for example, commentators, I think they can speak less about, oh, they're going to lose 5 points, and more about letting audiences experience it and then guide them through what was so enrapturing about that performance. It was a little different. Maybe you saw instances where they were skating in multiple directions, and so the judges, that's something that the judges notice and they score in skating skills. Or I always think about that one skater who did the super long forward outside edge into the forward loop.
Oh, Reno,
Versus,
yes, yeah, it's amazing. And that, like, everyone noticed that. Yeah,
yes, that like rocked the skating world.
yeah.
That was like the loop heard around the world. And it was such a moment, but I don't feel like the general audience who might be tuning in might be like would get the significance of that moment. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's a brave moment. That's taking 10, I don't know, maybe 10 seconds to do one move, which is kind of on the contemporary side. That's not very that's not very traditional. That's very like we're going to sit in this moment together and we're going to enjoy it. And so giving that context to people who might not have access to that information, I think is really important as well.
Yeah, you saying that just made me think, how they had during the Summer Olympics that like Snoop Dogg was the like sort of like it was like almost like the normal person's ambassador to the Olympics, and that like everyone was so excited about like Flava Flav discovering like women's water polo, and like it makes me think about like, not necessarily like from, that exact perspective, but like, what if you could get, people who are, musicians, who are dancers, who are like, it's that like cross celebrity, idea to, to comment on, on figure skating. And I think that could be so popular and so accessible for
Mm.
people, but accessible in a way that like they are actually bringing an expertise to looking at it, even if it's not just a skating expertise. And so anyway, like,
I just kind of think skating has this history of telling people, like, this is what is good. This is what
mhm,
this means. And I think we need to embrace a culture that's more questions based. So
mhm,
we can start thinking about skating in terms of maybe in the commentator booth there's a non-skater and a skater. And that non-skater is like, I'm here to ask the questions. Be like, they seem really upset, but that seems like a awesome performance. And then the skater can give context to why and have this like dialogue and conversation, as opposed to And you see here, this person is doing a back outside edge, and that means it's a toe loop. And you're just like, okay, we need to give people a reason to care about what the commentators are saying, and not just like either wish they were turned off or tuned to a different stream and not wanting to hear them, or um, things like that. I think there's just like an opportunity to really have a question and a dialogue as to why skating is so cool.
I really like that. And there, yeah, there, I think, I hope with this Olympics that there are opportunities for that. I would love to see some, yeah, some creativity from the big broadcasters who have the ability to, and the budgets to do some of those things.
We need, and and I know I keep interjecting.
Oh, please.
I love video games, and you can always tell when the creators of the video game play the video game because it's good, it's fun. Like you're
Mhm.
like, oh, this is fun. And so the more people that we can get who are invested in making skating better for a skater, I think we're in good shape. It's
Mm.
when people are, and I honestly don't know specifics, but I get this feeling that there's a lot of telling happening and assuming, like you were suggesting, of how do skaters enjoy skating. There's a lot of that assumption happening, and I want more people who actively benefit from the policy changes to be included in the policy changes.
You're getting to one of my favorite topics, which is meaningful athlete representation in action
Mm,
in decision making processes. But it does get to that question that like when we start trying to like detangle what does it take to make skating be what we want it to be, a lot of the answers come back to money, and then the usual
mm,
answer for how do we get the money is, well, we have to make it more popular, so therefore we need to chase like what is going to make money and make it popular. And it often comes like from a I which then makes you have to ask those questions of like, okay, but do we actually, are we actually looking at real metrics in that way? And then also I
mm,
think, the stuff that actually goes viral is often, I mean, there's algorithms and whatever, but like I was thinking about on ice perspectives and how some of the videos that are the most popular are not the skaters that have won the gold medals. There's
very rarely.
performances that touched people for some reason and they wanted to share it.
Mhm.
And, if looking at that, I think would make us think a bit differently about what actually appeals to people. And sometimes it's the authenticity that's appealing to people, not the chasing the trend.
Yeah. People want to be able to see a better world because of what they're watching. And if they can see that through skating, it's transformative. I mean, that's why I'm still in it.
Hmm.
Because I'm still learning about myself and the world through skating.
I love that. Um, I always like to wrap up, and this is sort of an opportunity to throw in something you haven't said or recap something. But what do you hope for from the future of figure skating?
I think it's exactly what I ended up saying was, and kind of what I based the whole idea of a coaching philosophy around, is that I want people to see skating as an opportunity or a tool, a way to understand more about yourself and the world around you. Because ultimately, it can always lead into this conversation of curiosity. What can I learn? What do I not already know? And isn't that exciting? Because that's how I'm going to grow as a person. I really want to stray away and help lead in a new era of skating that looks at skating in that way instead of comparing yourself to the ideal and being disappointed and wanting to stop.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. I really enjoyed this conversation, and everything that you're doing in the world of skating is really inspiring and so important.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being given some sort of platform to blab and figure things out together. So it's really nice. And I'm such a fan of the podcast, like I said, so I'm honestly I can't wait for all the episodes. that come out after too.
Thanks again to Jimmy. You can find the transcript and links to the things we talked about in the show notes and description. You can follow Jimmy on Instagram at #Jimmy. You can reach me with comments or suggestions for people I should talk to by email at fsfuturepodcast@gmail.com or Instagram at futurefspodcast. Remember to subscribe to the Future of Figure Skating on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts and share it with your friends.